How to be the perfect sugar daddy? I was that teenager who had a boyfriend who was an adult. I was 16 years old and on a trip to Hawaii with my high school senior class. We didn't have many chaperones, and the ones we did have were busy with their things. At the meeting, before we left, the main chaperone told us to be careful because I don't want anyone's mother showing up at my door 9 months later to tell me their daughter's pregnant. That was it. The party had started. It was great to go to Hawaii with a group of high school friends. We had a good time because we drank a lot of alcohol, ate a lot of good food, and went to parties. I met him at that time. I remember a few of us were laying on one bed talking, and he was laying on the other. I saw him looking at me. The next thing I knew, we were dating. I was 16, and he was 23. He worked at my high school, so we knew each other from work. At first, we did keep things secret, but in the end, everyone found out. Most likely because we spent so much time together. I told my family he was 18, which was a lie. He did not look like he was 18. All I cared about was that this man loved me. He was my first in a way. Technically requires another article. Let's just say it's a common problem among young girls whom older men target. People have said that age differences don't matter when it comes to love. I agree with this in general, but I wasn't the first high school girl he dated. His last girlfriend was 14 when they were together. Also, his best friend was a 15-year-old girl from our high school. I was a lonely teenager. People knew me because I was a cheerleader and because one of the prettiest girls in school was my best friend. Everyone loved her, and I just knew her. Even though I smiled a lot, I was really sad. I also had trouble with drinking. Teenage girls could get alcohol easily back then. Some of us hung out with a lot of adult men. People my age told me I had an old soul, but the truth is that I did get along better with adults. Maybe it was because as a child I spent a lot of time with my elders. So, I didn't think it was a problem that I was dating an adult man. As far as I knew, none of his childhood friends seemed to think it was a problem. We spent a lot of time with his high school friends, all of whom were grown men with wives or girlfriends. At least, no one said anything to me. I believe in love. People do fall in love. There was a point in time when it was perfectly normal for a man in his early 20s to fall in love with a girl in her late teens, date her, and then marry her. One of my high school teachers had been married to his wife for years, and they were the same age difference as my boyfriend, and I. That's how I explained why an older man was going out with me. When I realized after 7 years that he wasn't going to marry me, I left him. On top of that, they lied and cheated. He cheated on me with his 14-year-old girlfriend who was also a teen. He might have done it when she was 15 or 16. When I left, one of his best male friends told me I should think about bringing his friend back. Nobody's going to love you like, did. My response was, oh yeah. My thoughts, however, yup, damn right. I deserve a better kind of love than that. I was in my late 20s when a relative who found out his real age said, somebody needed to kick ass? I didn't see it at first, but I felt comforted by her sentiment. Fast forward several years later as a social worker with Child Protective Services, I had the opportunity to speak with other teenage girls who told me about their boyfriends. These were 13 and 14-year-old girls who talked about their 40-year-old boyfriends. Men who fell under the category of a different name. I was able to have empathy for these young ladies who fell in love with grown men who made promises to them about life better than the one from which they came. I was lucky to have a beautiful son when I was in my 30s. I remember the day I looked at him and declared that he would have a healthier life than I did. I also reflected on a couple of abusive relationships I had before giving birth. I began some intense healing over my history of childhood sexual abuse and abusive boyfriends. I remember the day I angrily thought about my relationship with this older man. I thought with anger, yes. Somebody should have kicked his ass. Although I do not advocate for violence, during this time of my process, I longed for the idea of someone jumping in and defending my honor. He had no business dating 14 and 16-year-old girls while having a 15-year-old female best friend. Though I went through my spiritual phase that included non-judgment and having compassion for hurt people who hurt people, I shook it off. This was wrong, and he should have been punished. I remembered a conversation that stood out to me when I thought back on it. When I was in high school and joking around with a football player, I laughed at something he did. I joked, "I'm going to tell you. On you." He replied, "Don't nobody give a FCK about. Don't nobody respect him." Something didn't feel right, but I didn't know what it was at the time. I finally do after 30 years. As I've been getting better, I've gone through a period of feeling sick to my stomach about this situation. I, a teenager, had sex with this grown man, who also had sex with other teenagers younger than me. I thought about the years it's taken me to get better. I thought about the times when the company logo from his job would make me feel upset. Or when I was listening to the radio and heard a song from when I was a teenager, I'd just changed the station. I would have this sick feeling even though it was a song that I loved as a teen. Upon reflection, I realized that those were just triggered by an extremely toxic relationship that was damaging to me as a teenager. Recently, as I was driving, I reflected on this article and several songs from my high school years came on the radio station. I didn't change the station for the first time. Instead, I listened, I teared up and I grieved. I felt sad for the little girl I used to be, the one who thought she had to hide behind alcohol, a fake smile, and a grown man who should have known better. I grieved the teenager who didn't get to go to her prom because of her adult boyfriend and his professional affiliation with the school. I felt bad for the teenager who missed out on being a teenager because she was too busy trying to be an adult. While I grieved, I cried and I let that teenager, that little girl transform and merge into the woman that I've become. I held her and told her I loved her. I told her she was beautiful and strong, and that she was worthy because I was worthy. Now that I'm back on the dating scene, I want to meet an amazing man who will be a great man for me and a good example for my son. I've done my best to hang out with men who respect women and only date or sleep with other adults as adults. I have an amazing 12-year-old son and I realized that I had been cautious about dating, thinking that because of my history I might have attracted someone who would hurt him, or me. I'm happy to say that I've moved past that and am now ready for a healthy relationship. It's been 30 years since I was in that relationship, but I don't feel bad about it. I can look back and say that it was an experience and that I've grown from it. It would have been nice had a caring adult intervened. Realistically, however, I know that as a teenage girl, nothing would have stopped me.